Zach is back. It's the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
Welcome back in, 5:16 on a Wednesday. We talked to Howard Eskin earlier. Now we'll talk to a real legend, tremendous play-by-play man for CBS, Yes Network, and also Westwood One, as we come to you today from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios, and that is the great Ian Eagle, who's kind enough to bless us with his presence right now. Bird, what's happening?
What's happening, Zach? Great to talk to you, man.
Well, thank you for coming on, and I appreciate it. I loved your call this weekend of the Pats game. As you know, I'm a big Patriot fan, but I do have to talk a little bit about the Jets first. They make the move to Geno Smith. I'm not surprised by it, and I think it's the right move. How about you?
Yeah, they're trying to stop the free fall here. At this point, at 1-5, they recognize that their season is on complete life support. They're not generating anything consistently on offense. And while everything clicked a year ago, Ryan Fitzpatrick was the right guy at the right time for the right team. It's not working now. And I understand why the move was made. Now, look, the decision during the offseason to give Ryan Fitzpatrick the $12 million for the year was based in large part to the vibe in the locker room, what he did last year, how he unified the team, the chemistry that developed with him under center. But with that said, they also didn't give him a multi-year deal, fully recognizing that he was not the answer for the future. The Geno Smith side of it, they still gave Ryan Fitzpatrick $12 million, so they clearly didn't have enough belief in Geno Smith to take over the team and run it. They decided to pay the piper and hope that they could recreate what they did a year ago. It didn't happen. It's been the exact opposite.
I don't fault the Jets for making the move in the offseason. I thought they really had no other alternative, and I don't fault them for making the move now because this season is over and you may as well see what Geno Smith has left in the tank. But you're right. That locker room wanted Ryan Fitzpatrick back. I'm curious now. He has 1 year left on his deal after this year. So you still have one more year. He's in his 30s. I'm curious to see if maybe they flop or try to flip Brandon Marshall in his next few days.
Yeah, I wonder what the perspective is. This is an older football team. This was a go for broke, try to ride it out as far as they could with this current crop. One of their best players has been there for 11 years, Nick Mangold. He's 32 years old. There's a lot of mileage there. On their offensive line, they made the deal for Ryan Clady, and it hasn't really paid off. This is not a strength of the team. They're not getting a push in the run game. They've been much better last year and prior to that with the likes of Chris Ivory running the football and DeBrickashaw Ferguson blocking for him. Injury on the right side of that line with Ben Ajalana stepping in, Brent Qualley seeing a lot of time, and that was based on the fact that Breno Giacomini went down with a lower back injury. He's on the PUP list, still hasn't played. So there's issues beyond the quarterback position. There's issues beyond the wide receiver position, and we haven't even dealt with the defense. That has been a huge disappointment. Considering the expectations for this year, they thought they had the best front in the NFL. They thought they were a surefire top-5 defense. They obviously put a lot of money into the secondary, paying Revis what they did prior to last year, paying Buster Screen what they did, drafting players that they felt would have immediate impact in Calvin Pryor, paying Marcus Gilchrist. This has gone about as poorly as it could have possibly gone, and I wouldn't be shocked if there's some moves up their sleeve because they need to make some long-term decisions.
You're exactly right. That's the most surprising thing is the defense, especially that defensive line, because on paper, that's a very talented unit, one of the best in the league, you would think. And the other night against Arizona, Ian, there were holes that myself and you, we could have run through. I just don't get what's going on with this defensive line.
Yeah, and Arizona was playing with two backup guards, so if there was ever a time that you thought the Jets would get some penetration, would also put some heat on a quarterback that was dealing with an injury himself, coming off a concussion. As we know, Carson Palmer, he ended up leaving the game in what he described as cramps, looked to be maybe a hamstring issue. But in the end, they didn't even threaten, and I think that's been part of the issue as well. You get into the fourth quarter, and this team is not even in a competitive position. And the numbers bear that out. They have struggled in the second half of games. They've been the worst scoring team in the NFL in the second half of games. They've been forced to pass, which has put Ryan Fitzpatrick in the position that he's been in previous games, forcing the football. The running game has been abandoned. They're answering a lot of questions right now, and they don't have specific answers. Todd Bowles, everything broke the right way last year. Coming off Rex Ryan, he had the right demeanor, the right touch with this team, and right now the honeymoon is over.
I said this earlier in the show, when Rex Ryan was on the hot seat, his players responded in that final game of the season, and there was an exuberant mood in that locker room. Mm-hmm. The other night, Todd Bowles, you're down 14-3, your season's on the line, and that offense starts out with a 3-and-out. Is he at risk of losing this locker room? Because I don't see the players responding to him when his forte is the defense. And the offense is a mess, but the defense is a mess as well.
Well, I think when you have an older team, Zach, that often happens. That could be the case. And I remember it vividly with Pete Carroll when he took over the team. There was exuberance. He brought a real swagger to that locker room when he replaced Bruce Coslett. This team, looking back on it, had some similarities in that sense. It was a veteran group on defense. They believed in Pete Carroll. They played hard for him when he was the defensive coordinator. And then when he took over as the head coach, they were 6-5. They had a chance to move to 7-5, take over first place in the AFC East. Dan Marino had a fake spike, and the rest is history. They didn't win another game. Carroll got fired at the end of the year. Eventually got the Patriots job, got fired there, took the USC job, and reinvented himself, and is now a football Hall of Famer as a head coach. For Todd Bowles, he's facing a similar challenge because of all the veterans on this team. You would think it's easier to get the veterans to follow along because they've been through the drill. I think it goes the other way oftentimes because they also know the drill, and they know that there could be major changes in the offing, and sometimes that creeps into the subconscious.
Ian Eagle with us. It's funny, we haven't even talked about one of their biggest issues, and that's allowing big plays each and every week. You saw it once again on Monday night. The right guard pulled, and David Johnson still running. These big plays, it's week after week. Can the coaching staff do any more? Or the players just not good enough?
Yeah, I did the Buffalo game on radio, which was their lone victory, and even in that win, Tyrod Taylor uncorked a couple of long plays down the sideline, one to Marquise Goodwin and the other to Greg Salas. I did the Pittsburgh game as well. That was a loss, and that was Ben Roethlisberger throwing deep every chance that he had and victimizing guys on the edges time in and time again. It's a problem. Obviously, for Todd Bowles, he's got to take this personally because this is his bread and butter. This is why he got the job. He got the job because of his creative defensive mind. You saw they were much more aggressive against Arizona than they had been in previous games. And I would be shocked if they don't plan on that again. Joe Flacco's dealing with some shoulder trouble of his own. I always find these games interesting, Zach, when you draw the game where each team is looking at the other side and saying, if we can't beat these guys, we've got big problems. And both teams are viewing it in the same manner with Baltimore and the Jets. Baltimore's got their own set of issues right now. They won 3 in a row to open the season. Then there was a correction of sorts because I'm not sure anybody believed that Baltimore was among the best teams in the AFC, but they continue to lose close games, 6 points or less. They can't finish the deal. They're 3-3 now. They were embarrassed through the air with Odell Beckham last week with the 2 long touchdowns. They're dealing with a ton of injuries themselves, but they look at the landscape in the AFC North right now, and they think to themselves, why not us? No Ben Roethlisberger for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cincinnati Bengals trying to figure out exactly who they are, dealing with the same kind of questions that they've always dealt with. Can Marvin Lewis maintain control of this team? And the Cleveland Browns are just looking for one win. Baltimore believes that their season can very much be saved here in Week 7.
Ian Eagle with us on the Zach Gelb Show. Over under 4.5 times you used the word sloppy play this weekend on the broadcast.
Maybe I should go on thesaurus.com and just find a couple different ways I can describe it, Zach.
So, Ian, let's just get back to the quarterback real quickly. He's a journeyman quarterback for a reason in Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's been inconsistent. Should people be surprised by the play this year?
Let me say this. On a personal level, having met with Fitzpatrick so many times over the years on various teams, there's not a a classier act that you're going to find. He is a great guy. I think he's gotten the most out of his ability. He's made a lot of money playing in the NFL based on taking advantage of opportunities when they popped up. But he always seemed to revert back to the mean in his case, which is that of a pedestrian NFL quarterback. This is who he is. Look, there's a finite number of people that can do this at this level and do it really well. There's probably 17 or 18 in the world that can do it. But then you still have to fill out the rest of the starting quarterback roles in the NFL. Fitzpatrick, Brian Hoyer, guys like that have been able to make a living because they show you enough, they're well-liked, they prepare, they're well-respected, and they can give you flashes where they can help a team win. But in the end, there are physical limitations that just don't allow them to be among the best at their position. And unfortunately for Ryan Fitzpatrick, this is probably the end of the run as a starting quarterback, other than an emergency situation where he might get an opportunity based on injury. But in terms of his resume, who he is, what he's accomplished, he's had a terrific run in this league.
Yeah, and he's also got a lot of opportunities. You even saw how he got this opportunity. It took a no-name player punching the starting quarterback to get a chance. And I'll just say one more thing, because I know a lot of people are beating up on Fitzpatrick, and you're right. It's a team disaster right now. I also look at the play calling of Chan Gailey right now, and I know when you're down in games, you're going to have to throw the football, and that's going to make the numbers look a little bit more inflated than what they would normally be. But you have teams the last 2 weeks. You did the Steelers game. You also saw the Arizona game the other night. They're not even trying to run the ball anymore, it feels like.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Gailey pushed all the right buttons last year with Chris Ivory in the backfield, violent runner, had the best season of his career, and parlayed it into a bigger contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had much better balance last season. Remember, they got off to a good start last year. They were 4-1. They were a surprise in the NFL, and it's another reminder of just how humbling this league is and how unforgiving this league is. Just because you do it one year, the Carolina Panthers last season going to the Super Bowl, the next year in this league, the bottom can drop out on you.
It's amazing.
And that's what's happened with the Jets. Everything that worked for Chan Gailey last year, great feel for the offense, great understanding of his personnel, career years for Fitzpatrick, Marshall, and Eric Decker, along with Chris Ivory. And now the narrative has completely changed. It's been a 180. It's been a reversal for this team. Gailey's the same guy, and I'm sure he's approaching it the same way. Things are just not working in their favor this year, and people are getting restless. People behind the scenes are getting restless, including their owner, I'm sure, because this was not the expectation level for this season.
Ian Eagle with us. Ian, let's get to the game that you're doing tomorrow night. It's an enigma what's going on with the Packers and their offense right now. Do you expect them to bounce back? I guess you have to bounce back against Chicago, no?
Yeah, the first thing that pops out is for the first time in his run as a starting quarterback with the Packers, Aaron Rodgers is actually getting criticism. Up until this point, he had seemingly been beyond reproach. And the reality is, we know in this league and professional sports in general, no one is above criticism. Even Joe Montana in Kansas City found himself on the wrong end of complaints and harsh opinions. So this is really the first time that Rodgers has dealt with it. When the Packers have struggled before, Rodgers was never the one that was targeted. This is the first time he's now experiencing what it's like to be under the microscope for his play, every single play scrutinized. The efficiency has not been there. And the way that they've run their offense in the past, which has been so consistent, is just not showing up on the tape. Things are off. That's his own quote, and you can tell. It's not the way it used to be, humming like a machine with McCarthy and Rodgers. And sometimes you wonder, when you have a long relationship like that, if it does lack the checks and balances behind the scenes, if there isn't another voice in that room that can be brutally honest and say, hey, guys, this is not working. We need to adjust to this. Defensive coordinators are smart. coaches in this league are smart. They catch on. They notice tendencies. And not to say that the Packers have to reinvent themselves, Zach. They can't. They won't. But they may have to find some new wrinkles here on offense that they will have to dust off from early in McCarthy's career calling plays in other places.
Let me ask you this, because you're a diverse broadcast. You do so many sports, and it seems like every day you're in a different stadium. Does it ever get old for you? And I know you have no ego and you're such a gregarious person. When you walk into a place like a Lambeau Field, does that feeling ever get old for you, though?
Certainly not Lambeau Field, because there is something special when you walk in there. There are a few venues that I would tell your listeners, if you've got a bucket list and you want to start checking off boxes, that's one of them. You got to go. It's a whole different vibe there. And I don't mean that to denigrate any other NFL stadium, but there really is something unique about that place. The whole football Sunday experience in Green Bay is unlike any other. With that said, to answer your question, no, it doesn't get old. I know how fortunate I am. I worked hard to get to this point, so I don't take any of it for granted. There's something about the games that can still excite you no matter what the travel was getting there, no matter the fact that you were sleeping in a hotel room the night before and you had thin walls and the guy next to you had sleep apnea and you could hear him snoring at 3:30 in the morning.
Are you talking about Dan Fouts?
You know what? It's funny it would come up this way. Yes, we often get roomed right next to each other, and he's got a serious snoring problem. But to answer your question, Zach, no, it is not lost on me. Going to these stadiums, NFL, NBA, college basketball, tennis, you name it, there's still that general zeal and joy when you walk in to call these events.
Let's say tomorrow is your last broadcast. You have one place to go to, one sport, one venue. What do you pick?
Whew. Have you heard something about my contract, Zach? Is this why you're bringing this up?
Sources have told me nothing. Nothing.
Okay. All right,
maybe
good.
you're joining Fox soon. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't want to get surprised by anything. For me, there's still something about going into Madison Square Garden and calling a basketball game. There is an electricity there that you can't simulate any other place. College basketball, there are certain venues, Kansas, Duke, where you walk in and there are goosebumps. But as a longtime NBA guy, I would tell you, having grown up in the New York area, when you walk into MSG, there is a part of you that still feels like a kid again. So that would be the one venue that if I only had one last chance to do one last event, it would be there.
Wrapping up with Ian Eagle, who joins us right now on the show. I have to get to the officials, and I know sometimes it's league-driven, and that's why the officials are forced to make these calls when Dean Blandino grades you each and every week. I believe these celebration penalties are ridiculous, and also pass interference. I still can't define it. How about you with the job of the refs so far this year? Because I love what McDonough had to say on Monday Night Football the other night.
Yeah, they're highly scrutinized, and I know they feel pressure and stress because Big Brother is watching, always watching. Literally every single play with a fine-tooth comb is being watched back at the league office. With that said, it would require not the individual officials, but a mandate from the NFL and from that department to ease up a bit. And that's where we get into trouble, the fact that there is this gray area when it comes to celebration. It's not specifically said. You know, Key and Peele, which was such a hilarious show on Comedy Central, Dan Fouts and I have had a lot of fun with it, but we had a number of Pittsburgh games where Antonio Brown is giving you the pelvic thrust. And the question is whether or not it's going to be 2 pumps or 3 pumps. And if it's 3 pumps, he gets a flag. And if it's 2 pumps, a lot of officials will turn the other way. And that's a Key and Peele sketch that was absolutely, gut-wrenchingly funny, but it's real. This is actually happening now in the NFL. So there does need to be more clarification. I feel as if it's not showing up the opponent, if you're not taunting them specifically in their face, on top of them, it's time to look the other way. It's time to allow these players to express themselves. Of course, there have to be limits when props are brought in, when Chad Ochocinco and Terrell Owens were going tit for tat,
Joe Horn,
back and forth. Yeah, it became almost silly, and I understand why the league had to react to that. But the dancing, the celebrating, the gesticulating, the histrionics, if it's done in a way where, again, it's not specifically showing up the opponent, there's got to be some leeway here.
But that was fun. Like, I remember those Joe Horn celebrations and what Ochocinco did. It was fun. Tio took it too far with the stomping on the star. But that's fun, and it seems like the NFL, they're trying to police out all that fun.
Yeah, but you just said it. Why did you determine that T.O. took it too far? Where's the line? I think that's what the league...
Well, because it got into an altercation, that's why.
Well, it led to more, exactly. But who's to say if you took out a Sharpie, that wouldn't lead to an altercation? You can't get inside opponents' heads as to what is poor sportsmanship and showing up the opponent and embarrassing the opponent. So... I understand that the league needed to get a hold of this. It had gotten out of control. But, look, players are always going to test the boundaries. We could go back to Billy White Shoes Johnson, who was a terrific return man and was a guy that would celebrate in the end zone. And at the time, everyone thought it was fun, and it was in good fun, but the league eventually responded to that. Every player is going to test the boundaries. That's how it always works. Define the boundaries, maybe redefine the boundaries, and also let's do it with some rationale and some logic. The comments that have been made that this could be a 15-yard penalty, this could be a fine, sometimes in excess or at the same level as a physical fine on a late hit or a nasty hit delivered. Of course, now we're getting into silly territory where it's hard to compare those two acts.
Just wait, though, for a playoff game this year to decide off a celebration and a penalty that leads to a team capitalizing off it. You know it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, and even the Odell Beckham part of it, which I'm sure has been brought up on your show at some point, getting involved with the kicking net. I don't know if they're engaged at this point, if they're registered somewhere. I've heard the candlesticks make a nice gift, whatever. The point is, if it begins to hurt your team, and if you can't harness some of that where it is counterproductive, of course it's going to become a distraction. The fact that your teammates are being asked about it, that your head coach is being asked about it, that means it's a distraction. That means it's crossed over into that area where what you're doing on the field is no longer the focal point. That's a problem. I have no problem with Odell Beckham showing his emotion and sharing his passion. That fuels him. That makes him a star. But, again, you have to understand, Antonio Brown, same deal when you're wearing shoes that are banned by the NFL and the fashion police are coming to the sideline and saying, hey, look, if you don't take off those shoes, we are going to pull you from the game. That happened in the Pittsburgh Jets game. That's in-game. That's happening during the action. That's a problem. That's when you're not recognizing that your priorities are a bit out of whack.
Last one for you, and I need to talk to the source directly. Is it true that you're leaving just to be the ring bearer for the Odell and the net marriage?
Obviously, I've got a lot of knowledge already. I have an understanding of how far that relationship has come. If that's what they need me to do, I'm malleable and I'm versatile.
Well, mazel tov on that relationship. I appreciate the time. Thanks so much. You're the best.
All right. Zach, great talking to you, bud. Keep it up.
Thanks so much. Ian Eagle, the great Ian Eagle, joining us on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. You never know what you're going to get with Ian, but I love talking to him, and he is one of the most gregarious broadcasters in sports. Really is. Such a nice person, is always willing to come on the show and help, and he's always entertaining. Sometimes you bring on these pedestrian guests that are just giving you every single statistic of boring stuff, and they have no personality. That's not Ian Eagle. Ian Eagle has personality, as we know. This is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey, 609-919-9200. That's the numbers you need to punch on in if you want to get on board. We'll take another break. When we get back, we have to wrap up shop. Andre Lawrence, our betting expert, will join us, and we'll give you a baseball update before we get on out of here.